Lovely. Welcome to the next part of this evening's event, which is, I think, the fun part. The AGM is business meeting is over. We're now going to talk with, we have very kind speakers, Elizabeth and Sunny. So Elizabeth is the Manager of Preservation Services at Queensland State Archives, and Sunny is the Object Conservator and Integrated Pest Management Conservator at Museums Victoria. I just want to thank you both so much for being here with us this evening. We're going to share some slides, which Susanna's doing because my computer is being very temperamental. Thank you, Susanna. I'm going to hand over, I think well, Sunny, will you be the first to speak? Yeah, thank you, Sunny. And then, so Sunny and Liz have basically might speak at different points, and then there'll be time for Q&A. So think about your questions during the presentation. I'll put myself on mute in a moment just so I don't ruin this recording by sort of umming and ahhing and getting creepy crawlies, like there might be some oohs and ahs, but I'm going to, I'm just going to put myself on mute, but I'll hand over to Sunny to do some more introductions and sort of explain a bit of her background as well. Thanks, Sunny.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sunny Marochini Darby, and I'm an integrated pest manager and collection preservation conservator at Museums Victoria. My role focuses on undertaking pest inspections of around 30 collection stores across all 5 Museums Victoria campuses, and consulting on the most appropriate methods of pest prevention, eradication, and management. I come from an object conservation background. And I hold a Bachelor of Arts in Conservation from University of Dubrovnik, and a Master's of Arts and a Master's of Science in Conservation from University College London. Before joining Museums Victoria in 2024, I held the position of a conservator in Colchester Museums, National Museum Scotland, and the J. Paul Getty Museum. So Liz, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm also have an objects background as well. That's how I started too. So at the moment I'm with QSA at the Queensland State Archives. I've got a pretty small team. There's about 3 conservators, I think, on staff plus myself. So we sort of look after a whole range of different preventive stuff as well as the traditional kind of innovative treatments and things like that. So yeah, I've done lots of really weird and different things in my career. I've done crime prevention, I've done engineering, I've done a whole range of different things. But I think the key thing with those kind of experiences is that you get something from everything, and it helps to kind of broaden your knowledge base, I guess, on a lot of stuff. So I studied back in the 90s, I'm giving my age away, at the Canberra course. So that was quite some time ago. So yeah. That's me in a nutshell.
Can I change the slides, or maybe next slide?
I was trying in the background to figure out how to do it, but it wasn't seeming to let me. So I'm just going to see if I can do it from here. There we go. Cool.
Yeah, beautiful.
Tell me when to change.
Yep. So I just wanted to have like a little overview of what our presentation is going to discuss. So we will cover a short introduction to IPM. Then we'll have examples of documentation in Queensland State Archives and Museums Victoria, which hopefully will help you set up or improve your current pest monitoring and documenting. Then we will discuss some of our top tips for successful implementation of integrated pest management. And lastly, we will discuss some of the case studies that we worked on. So hopefully that will be of help as well. We will also provide you with some IPM resources and encourage you to ask many questions. Next slide. So the Integrated Pest Management program involves strategic activities aimed at mitigating the risk that pest activity poses in a sustainable way that reduces the need for chemical methods of pest control. How do we define a pest? A pest is a living organism that can cause damage to material and structure. So when we're implementing IPM, we're basically focusing on monitoring. We're using traps and pheromone lures to determine pest populations and maintain detailed record keeping. We're inspecting our collection, looking for pest signs, for example, such as grass. We're preventing pest entry through routine maintenance, pest proofing, and sealing openings or modification of the environment. We're focusing on sanitation. We're removing food, water waste, or other shelter to eliminate pest conductive conditions. Good housekeeping practices are essential. And also it is important to take appropriate measures when we spot an infestation. That involves isolating the object and treating it before reintroducing it into the store. So I also mentioned some of the other factors that you want to consider. There's a long list of material that is susceptible to pest damage, but here I have an image of some of the example of museum items that you should keep an eye on. Protonaceous and cellulosic material is considered a risk for pest damage. So for spaces that hold that material, there should be an IPM plan in place. The next point I wanted to discuss is the temperature and humidity. They're a great way to exclude pests. General rule is to have a 21 degrees Celsius and 50% of relative humidity in our collection spaces, which is a compromise of human comfort and collection needs. However, at Museums Victoria, we sometimes drop our temperatures to 19 or 18 degrees as a form of like passively influencing the pests, because temperature and humidity directly affect the insect reproduction cycle, and as such are an important thing to monitor or alter if needed. We implement these things in high-risk collection stores such as entomology and natural history collections. Quarantine is a really important thing to discuss as well. If you can separate your spaces between the dirty and clean ones. And basically at Museums Victoria, when an object is moved from a dirty space, which is a lab or an exhibition area, into a clean collection space, we quarantine it, we inspect it, and we freeze it if needed. And some museums also have an approach that all organic material and objects coming into the building must initially be placed into a quarantine, and then checked for signs of infestation. This area needs to be physically isolated from collection, storage, and display areas. And I wanted to mention that condition of your collection space is really important. You should always look how you can improve the store envelope and identify any cracks, bleeds in the wall, or the availability of food. And I cannot accentuate how important housekeeping is. So we usually say that cleaning is 99% of successful prevention. Next slide, please.
Cool. So that's me, is it? Next slide, please. So basically, it's really recommended that you keep some kind of information around what you do in regards to IPM and what you find as well. So you build up a bit of a database or data set about what sort of activity you've got and where and that kind of thing. So really strongly recommend that as a minimum you keep some kind of map or diagram of where your traps are. I don't know how many times we go in and we find just these random traps or even cockroach baits and things that just appear from nowhere, and we had no idea that they were there. So it's really, really handy just to keep a handle on where you've put stuff, if you can. We use a code on each of our traps, and it's based on basically what building number, what floor number, and there's just a sequential number. So that helps us sort of keep track of where things were, because sometimes these things move. I don't know if you have that experience too, Sunny. Yep, you put them down somewhere and then they went up somewhere completely different. So we also, on the traps themselves, we note the dates that they've been installed and last checked as well. And we definitely keep a running log of our checks. as well as any incidental reports. So they're things like where staff might come across stuff in offices or in the reps, in repositories or wherever. We keep a record of everything. So we build up a picture of, like a complete picture of the pest activity across the whole facilities. Some people use spreadsheets, and I think Sunny is going to talk about the way that she does hers. We used to use the old ZAC Access database. I don't know if anybody's ever had experience with that one. Access databases aren't supported anymore, and it was free. It sort of served its purpose for a while, but I don't think we can use it anymore. I think it's actually been taken offline. But so what we've done now is that we're now trialling another system, which is called Conserve Cloud. And I'm really interested to hear from other people if they've tried it as well, what their experience has been. Next slide, please. So basically that's sort of part of the dashboard that you get with Conserve. It's called Conserve Integrated Pest Management Cloud Software. So all of your data sits on a cloud somewhere. It's developed by a company called Conserve, based in the States. Their company's mainly geared for environmental monitoring, which actually costs some really big dollars to roll out. But they've included this IPM kind of module as part of this sort of product, which is free. It's hard to find on their site, but currently it is free. So that's why we're particularly interested in it. But yeah, there is a bit of work from your end. If you need to set up an account, like get a bit of a subscription going, and then you load it up, and you've got to put in your own sort of facilities data. So you've got to structure it your whatever way works for you. So each trap basically gets registered on the dashboard. It does let you derive some reports, but what I really, really like about it is that we can attach photos. So you can see on that slide, there's a photo of our trap location, and you sort of pin it to there. So it makes it really easy to know exactly where it was when you go back to have a look. And you can get an app for it that you can use off your tablet or your phone. So obviously you'll need internet connection if you're doing it that way. But basically you can record as you go, and you can add photos of what you're finding in traps as well, sort of pinned against each of those trap locations. So next slide, please. You can also record your incidental findings as well. So you kind of register those like for a space and just give it a different code or something. So then you know that's what you're picking up in those areas. So here you can see it shows you the history of a particular trap, when it went in, and it gives you an idea of how often it's been checked. The other cool thing about this product is that it links into that museum's Pest ID site, which is really handy. When you're on the hoof, you can look it up and double check against their database to help with the identification of what you're finding. So that's really cool. We really like that bit. So next slide, please. So we used to, this is some examples of some of our traps that we use. So the one on the left is the sort of typical blunder trap. The one on the right is a pheromone-based one that we use for beetles. We had issues with tobacco beetles in some of our kitchens, and we've had quite a bit of success with those, the ones on the right. So the one on the left, and I think, Sunny, looks like you do a similar thing. We used to mark the pests off as we went with the little markers to mark, so you knew what was new and what was old the next time you went. And we used to colour code it, so you might use red one time and then blue the next, that kind of thing. It was pretty time consuming, so being able to take the photos now is a lot easier. You can just store them and then compare to the ones previously. So much easier. You can use a tablet to take your photos if you don't want to do it this way. Just make sure that your trap number is captured in the image, so you know as well which trap number. So you can see there, the one on the left and also the one on the right to some degree. It's got the code number and that kind of stuff. I also, if you're doing it that way, if you're storing all your photos on a network drive or something, and there's a bit of work involved to sort of set it up So it's sort of rational for you if you want to put it into subfolders and things like that for your photos. You can put location data on photos as you go as well. That can be helpful, but I find that's hard to interrogate later on. The key thing is to try and keep it in a sensible way that you can access later on that makes sense to you. Blah, blah, blah. So next, in terms of using your data, you want to build up a picture over time of what pests are where. It can show you very much where you're starting to develop seasonal trends as well, the life cycle status, and what strategies or treatments that you've tried that have been effective or not as well. It allows you to home in on hotspot areas as well. So that'll help you to maybe change and modify your trap locations, that kind of thing. So especially if you can map in your storage areas, it will help work out if it indicates an infestation or if it's just incidental or not worth worrying about. If it's old, is it new? Is it getting bigger as a problem? The right-hand side, as I said, was a pheromone dome trap that we used that's actually for multiple beetle species, not just for the tobacco beetles. We've had some success for those. So notice that I've got the pen in there as well, and there's a ruler just to give you an idea of scale as well. That's always good to go back when you're looking at the photos. Next slide, please. This is one feature that I don't like about this particular product is the reporting. The dashboard is really horrible. That's just a personal kind of opinion on that one. They use some really weird coefficient or index based on the space size and the numbers to report on. But you can interrogate the numbers and the locations and date ranges, but it's a bit clunky. It's not visible on this particular dashboard. There's another part of it that you can do that. But what I really do like about this is that you can download a full CSV. And if you've got someone on staff, not myself, but somebody who's really clever with Excel, then you can develop really cool dashboards and analytics and stuff that way as well from the CSV. I find the raw data is actually more helpful than the dashboard. At the moment, we only have the data on this one from when we started using it, and we still have to add, we're in the process of adding our historic data from the old ZAC database. We did a purge from that before we swapped over, before we lost it. So we've got to go back now and add that stuff that goes back to, I think it's 2006, something like that. So at the moment, we're relying pretty much on corporate memory in terms of like long-term history. So that's our experience. And as I said, I'm really keen to hear from anybody else who has had experience with this particular product. Thanks. Over to you, Sunny.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Similar to what Liz mentioned, I'm just going to quickly address how I'm labeling the traps. The first few letters are associated with the site, then the second letter is associated with the store, and then I usually say whether the trap is placed on the floor, on a shelf, or next to an object, and then I have just an assigned number for them. But yes, as I mentioned, I do place my trap around vulnerable artifacts, along the walls, corners, or any ingress points. I know that sticky traps don't attract pests on their own, so they only work if they're in the right place at the right time. So I have to really think about where I'm placing them. I do also use pheromone traps, which in this case, the second image, they're used to attract male insects. Here, specifically attracting webbing clothes moths, but don't really attract females. They lay eggs. So it's kind of like a general understanding of the numbers that we have in the space. That's how I'm tracking the population and trying to figure out if I have an issue. But I'm also, as you can see, because I don't change my traps every time I have a catch, I do change them where the catch accumulates or if it's really dusty and unusable. But I do kind of label around them that I've already checked that specific species or that insect so that I don't count them again. At Museums Victoria, I record all our or like catches using Excel spreadsheets. They're very, very similar to the systems I used when I worked in the UK. But I also have to say that each institution kind of develops their own way of tracking pests that suits their needs. So mapping, I think, is quite essential. And it really helps me visualize the pest activity and spot potential points of entry and also detect infestations. I also, as Liz mentioned, I also have to make sure that no traps go missing, because that happens. Because also a missing trap could end up catching a non-pest insect, which then might become food for other pests. And I also think that that's why proper labeling is so important, because if the trap is moved or relocated somehow, or someone brings it to my table, I really have to know where it came from. So I highly encourage you to label your traps. Something I also personally track is the dates that the traps are replaced. And I don't really change my traps unless as I mentioned, they're dusty or they really catch a lot of insects. And for me, I also have location descriptions. I don't have photos of the locations, but I try to describe the locations as accurately as I can. And yes, basically to help me find a trap or reposition if I have to. So next slide, please. So all the information I collect is shared in monitoring reports. These go out to our collection managers, conservators, and facility staff. Basically, anyone who has responsibility for the collection. Reports can include recommendations for freezing, improving of the envelope, and cleaning if it's needed. And also they show graphs and maps, which usually are useful for spotting trends or identifying hotspots. Next slide, please. This is one of the examples I love to share. It's from a natural history collection that is storing a lot of taxidermy specimens. And it's considered a high-risk store in terms of pests. Basically, you can see here that our numbers of webbing clothes moths were rising, which was suggesting a possible infestation. And I would say if you have doubts that there is an infestation in your collection space, I did a survey of the collection and I identified a single specimen that was infested with webbing clothes moths. After that specimen was extracted and frozen, you can see how the numbers dropped significantly. But I also want to say that this is how your data can guide your decision. Next slide, please. I also wanted to mention that my record keeping is always evolving. So I shifted to using scientific names for pests, and I keep refining my templates that we use for reporting. Next slide, please. At the end of the year, this is something I love doing. I analyze all the trap data and identify weak spots in the collection stores. Traps that haven't had any activity for a long time, I either move them or remove them. And also I wanted to just clarify this. I only monitor collection spaces. General areas at Museums Victoria are monitored by our external pest contractor. And also our external pest contractor also takes care of all the rodent activity, whether it's in general areas or in collection spaces. Next slide, please.
Cool. Is that me now? I can't remember.
Sorry. Next slide, please.
Next slide, please.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So basically, these are my 5 sort of top, tips. There's lots and lots and lots. It's really hard to narrow it down to 5, actually. But basically, the key thing is it's everybody's responsibility, but especially that one certain someone. You want somebody that is your go-to person and someone who's responsible for coordinating and leading your IPM. I would suggest that you pick that person very carefully to be your subject matter expert. So someone that can upskill and improve their knowledge around the whole IPM thing. It's better if you can get someone who's got a bit of influence as well, and maybe a little bit of authority that can actually act, so make things actually happen for you. But having said that, it really is very much a shared responsibility across your organisation. Everybody has a role in IPM. It's really important to promote awareness and involvement. So we use pooters. They're like a little aspirator thing that people can collect pests, and we just rely on everybody that finds anything to bring it to the lab, and we can identify and record it. Really, really important. And that extends not just to people on staff, but also contractors, our cleaners, security guys, everybody, contractors that come in as well. So, and our volunteers as well is another key one. So I always say human behaviour can be your biggest failure point potentially. So the next point is definitely about checking new materials, and I think Sunny might talk a little bit more about quarantining and treatments around that. But it's not just your collection stuff that you need to worry about. It's also general office supplies, consumables, and I hate to say it, but even archival consumables can be how they hitchhike in on. So you need to be really aware of basically everything that's coming in. They, particularly the target ones that we're interested in, things like silverfish, they love cardboard. The other place that we've seen stuff hitchhiking on is, you know, that organic popcorn that they use for packaging. They often use it for, like, from Officeworks and places like that. That stuff's actually organic, and tobacco beetles just absolutely love it. So we've had a couple of instances where they've come in just on like printer cartridges and things like that, like not collection. So yeah, just be aware of that. Know your enemy and know your facility and your collection. So that's about being aware of where your vulnerabilities are, what is really at risk in your collection, what are your target species that you're interested in, all that kind of stuff. So again, that's where that one special person is really key to being able to help guide in that space. Definitely keep records and use them to make decisions, and we've talked about that. And the last one, really, really important, ask for help if you need to. You shouldn't feel like you need to do this all on your own, and there's plenty of assistance and advice available. All you need to do is sort of reach out. So over to you, Sunny.
Next slide, please. So this is something I'm advocating for a lot. It's just cleaning of collection spaces. And I think it's one of the most important parts of pest prevention. And also, as Liz mentioned, don't allow any food or drink really in collection spaces, and water is usually our only exception. Second one, I am a big fan of talking about how store envelope is very important. This really means that you're checking of any ingress points or door seals or cracks in the perimeter wall, and you're gonna see that if you're getting an ingress of a lot of insects, that you probably have some issues that can be rectified. Third tip would be to monitor your space, to use traps near vulnerable items or any suspected ingress points. And that's going to basically help you a lot to understand your store better and understand the activity in your store. Fourth, this is my big advice, to possibly invest into a chest freezer. They're a great option for pest eradication when you basically notice that something potentially might be infested, or even if you have any new acquisitions. I used in the past chest freezers. I mean, at Museums Victoria, we currently have a walk-in freezers, but that's often not really something that small museums can invest in. So when you're freezing your items, the key is just to wrap the items properly in polyethylene, remove as much air as you can, and also seal it well so you can prevent any condensation issues. And my number 5 would be to be aware of the potential signs of pest presence and to learn about your collection pests. So signs of pest presence can include dead insects, brass, webbing, larval skins. And a key point here is also not to spend too much time identifying every insect you catch, because there is about 20 museum pests that really matter. And also the risk they present also depends on the numbers that you have caught. Liz mentioned this, but sometimes pests you can actually have something that is in the space and feeds on your collection or presents a risk to your collection, but sometimes you can have a predator that is feeding on other insects in your traps or on the floor, or you can even have an indicator of the environmental conditions in your stores. So not necessarily every time you find an insect in your space is associated with some sort of infestation. Yeah, I'm also a big fan of like numbers and what they tell me. Because I can't panic about one silverfish if I find one silverfish. But I also included some of the images to kind of to help you visualize the issues that I've encountered. The first image is showing a problem with door seals that weren't properly placed on our external doors, and I was getting a lot of ingress of insects in our collection store. So this was a part of my envelope assessment, and I flagged this with my facilities. So this was improved. And these doors were not leading into the collection space. They were leading into a hallway that was next to our collection space. But I was still finding really high numbers of insects I wouldn't usually expect to find while I was doing my pest monitoring and checking the traps. So I'm happy that I looked beyond my collection store and noticed this issue. The second image is our walk-in freezer. So I forgot to mention that the chest freezers that I used in the past were able to reach minus 30 degrees Celsius. And I would usually expose objects to this temperature for 14 days, although it really depends on the thickness of the object and yes, the thickness of the object. You can also expose it for a bit less. Third image is a trap that was bitten and chewed by a rodent. And rodent usually uses this type of material to build their nests. So it was an indicator that we do have pest activity in the store. And the fourth image is just infestation of a carpet beetle on one of our items, where I found quite noticeable damage and also carpet beetle larvae. So my takeaway basically from this is that if something doesn't look quite right, it could very well be pest damage or something related to pests. Next slide, please. So weather can have a big impact on the presence of non-pest insects in the environment in our buildings. Their numbers often fluctuate naturally, and for crickets, for example, heavy rainfall can contribute to spikes in breeding and activity. When this happens, any poorly sealed spaces might suddenly see an influx of these insects. And this can actually become a real problem because once they die indoors, they remains can serve as food sources for museum pests. For example, in one instance, a trap was misplaced. This is the second trap that you're seeing on this slide. And the crickets that were stuck on the trap began attracting pests. Yes, carpet beetle larvae, and they were full of them. So of course, this ended up being a risk to our collection as well. So we had this similar issue with flies. And one of our sites, there was a surge of flies in our collection spaces that was caused by the debris entering through the gaps on the roof. And we had bird nests or potentially carcasses there, which were the likely source of the flies. And the flies were spread all throughout the store and even ended up in our traps. So in this situation, it's crucial to just clean, and any proteinaceous matter, even from non-pests, quickly becomes a food source. As you can see in my images, the ingress that we had was quite significant. So yes, this is one of my recommendation on why I always say to clean, and also why I always say to be aware of your misplaced traps and what's happening in the collection spaces. Next, please.
Oh, okay. So this is a real bugbear of mine at the moment. So this is a bit of a case study. Through our monitoring, we noticed a really significant increase in silverfish activity in different places in our building. And what was really concerning was that they were turning up in places where they shouldn't have been. So despite all of our different controls, including environmental controls, these guys were turning up just about anywhere. Not in damp areas, not near water sources, anywhere. What we found out, and I'm telling everybody that I talk to about this, there are silverfish and there are silverfish. On examination, what we noticed is that there were some different anatomical features to the ones that we were finding, and they were not the traditional European silverfish that we all learned about at Conservator school, which is the European one, the Lepisma saccharina, which is also known as the common silverfish. So what they are, in fact, is a species that's absolutely endemic to Australia. The scientific name of these things is Tenolepisma longicordatum is the scientific name, and the sort of common name for them is grey or long-tailed. The scary thing about these guys is that they are a lot more robust and resilient than their European cousins. They like it warmer, and they can survive in much drier conditions, around 55% relative humidity. So what are we all sitting on with our climate control? 50 to 55. They're as happy as Larry. So this is why we're finding them in these places that we shouldn't, expect to find them. They do like humid conditions as well. And this is another scary thing. Apparently they can climb, which is the saccharina won't. They won't climb. So these guys will actually make their way up shelving and things like that. They still eat all the same things. They were first documented in Australia in 1908, but first observed, South Africa beat us in 1905, is where they were first reported. They're now establishing as a major pest in glams across Europe. But they were being investigated as a major pest by CSIRO here in Australia as far back as 1935. So they first appeared in the UK only in 2014. So that's how long these guys have been running around causing dramas in Australia. So I've got a little mug shot here to show you. There's a few little mug shots actually. So the one on the left is the one that we're concerned about. The one on the right is the saccharina, which to be honest, when I've gone back and had a look through all of our information, all of our data, I haven't found a single saccharina. They've all been this other one, the grey. You can tell the difference between the two because the tail filaments, the circuit at the back, they tend to be longer than the body. If you see between the two, you can see the difference. Sometimes that's really hard to tell because if you start messing around with the bodies a bit, some of those things can fall off. So you can get a bit of, false sense of security or the other way around. Their antennae tend to be longer as well. They've got barbed setae or hairs around the edge of their bodies, whereas the saccharina look kind of nude, if I want to use that expression. And they have this sort of fringe around their head, but you'll probably need to magnify them to actually see the fringe. So if we go to the next slide. So here he is on the left-hand side. So one of our archivists said you can tell he's an Aussie one because he's got a mullet, because he's got that sort of fringe all the way around. So yeah, that's him sort of close up and then further away. So you can see the details of the barbed hairs that fringe that head and body. The next slide, please. Don't go just by colour as well, because there's quite a bit of variation within silverfish in terms of colour, so you can't just go by colour alone. This slide actually just shows the top view and the bottom view. And if you're getting like an entomologist to actually identify these things, they'll be looking at really, really minute details in terms of like which segment has got this many number of hairs and all that kind of stuff. Generally, just these kinds of photos, these really good reputable reference photos are probably enough for you to be pretty confident if it's one or the other species. And the reason that you want to know is it Saccharina or the other one is because the traditional approaches to dealing with Saccharina is to modify the environment to make it drier, but that's not going to work for these guys. So a lot of those traditional things don't work. And in fact, there's a whole series of different baits and pesticides and things that people are now developing specifically in Europe, where they're becoming a big, big problem, particularly for this actual species. So that's why you probably need to know the difference. So yeah, they feed on cellulosics, all the traditional things, carbohydrates, but they also need proteins. Particularly the younger ones will eat dead molts and things like that, dead bodies and things. So they love archival collections. So these are the guys that I wake up in a cold sweat at night having nightmares about. And we've just been absolutely hammered with these guys in recent months. So it's all my worst nightmares coming true at the moment. They love all the sizing and the adhesives and all that kind of stuff. And as I said, they love cardboard, especially corrugated cardboard. They'll hide in the little grooves inside the cardboard. So if you've got boxes and things kicking around in office areas and things, perfect harbourage for these guys. They like everywhere where it's dark and they feel safe and there's a food source around. You'll find them in cracks and crevices. So caulking, sealing up those cracks and crevices is really, really important. They don't need a lot of space. Remember, these guys are only little and they don't need a lot to eat either. They've only got really tiny tummies. So the other key thing to note is that they prefer to be active in the dark. So if you're seeing these things, particularly live and in the middle of the day, that's usually a pretty good indication that you've got a fairly big infestation somewhere. So the next slide, as I said, there's a few different sort of controls around specifically for silverfish. We've started using one from Garrard's called Silver Check, which has got a bait that's specifically for this species. And we've had a little bit of luck, not a huge amount of luck with them. The other thing that we've tried is these deco packs. I don't know if anybody's used these. These have got boric acid in them, and it's like they'll take the poison and then they'll go and die, which is not ideal because then you've got dead bodies in crevices, which then provide a food source for those secondary or predatory species that come in later. So that's why we started to put them in the little sticky trap. So they actually had to get stuck on there. They'd get attracted to it, but they wouldn't be able to get out again. So we've had fairly limited luck with these. I've got a colleague in Sydney that absolutely swears by these. He says just throw handfuls of this stuff everywhere. And we've tried that, doesn't work. So it's really interesting, really interesting. So the key point in all of this, I guess, is know your silverfish. So there's another little secondary warning, which I'm going to throw in here, and I don't mean to alarm people, but we just need to be aware of it. Be on the lookout for another new species, which is called the ghost silverfish. He's very real. He's the same sort of family. He's Tenelepisma calvum is his name. He's found in northern and southern hemisphere. He's now established in Europe, and he's causing a lot of grief in Japan, particularly in the gland sector there. So he may head our way if he's not already here. Keep an eye out on those really reputable websites like museums in UK. I get a lot of information from the UK British Pest Control Association. They do these fantastic webinars and seminars that they put through. You can just do like Google. They're all free and you can tap in, and they've had some really, really good ones because, as I said, it's becoming a really big issue in Europe, both this one and also this other, the new emerging one, the Calvum. What's really scary about Calvum is they look very similar to the other one that I showed you, for the Logocardium. But these guys also don't need really high humidities to survive. They're really quite happy at those really moderate relative humidities, which is really scary for museums, which is probably why they're so established in Japan and places like that. And they love it about 20 degrees, that kind of thing. So most, museum environments, that is going to be perfect for them. But what I'm finding really scary about these guys is that apparently they can reproduce without males. So in theory, you only need one. I always say all you need is two for you to, start a problem off. But with these guys, you only need the one. And if she's been a party girl, you're in big trouble potentially. So there you go. That's my little case study for you. Next slide, thanks. Oh, that's me again. Okay. So this, I just want to show you really, really quickly. So this guy's quite famous from our collection. He actually is part of our collection. His name is Chomp for obvious reasons. So it's a register that was at the Supreme Court building here in Brisbane in the 60s. They had an arson attack, and you can see evidence on Chomp of where the fireys came in. There's fire, there's smoke, there's soot damage, there's water damage. And then we always say that Chomp was keeping a secret. When you open it up, probably about a third of Chomp has just been completely consumed by, we presume, a rat, just by the sides of the bite radius on there. So if you're interested, we won't do it now, but there is a little article, and it features one of the conservators, Daniela Talasi, and it's on our Facebook page. If you want to have a look, there's a little article there about Chomp. You can have a bit of a squiz at him. So it's just a really, really strong reminder of just how much damage rodents can do in a really short time. And the key thing with Chomp is that you wouldn't have known that damage was there until you actually took that register off the shelf. And we think that that's what's happened, is that when they've gone to transfer it to us, they've gone, oops, half of it's gone. It's still an accession part of our collection. It's really boring. It's stock mortgages. So no one has ever actually requested it, but in theory they could. And with the reason that we haven't sort of just disposed of it is because there's actually still a lot of information on there. Even though it looks horrendous, there is still some information that's useful potentially for people in there. So a couple of really valuable lessons with Chomp. Yeah. Ta. I'll hand over.
Next slide, please. Although I have unfortunately encountered an active wood borer infestation since starting at Museums Victoria, I have seen several examples of historic infestations, and I'll highlight one on this slide. The first example is an iron sandbox showing the clear signs of past wood borer activity. Small exit holes and a large amount of wood dust are visible under the item. The wood have been completely pulverized and was structurally really compromised. So basically, when we lifted the box, the bottom detached because of the severe structural damage. So unfortunately, no adult insects were found, so I couldn't identify the exact species. But I'm only showing you this because it is possible to also have wood borer damage in books collection. And I found these images from a museum pest webpage. So luckily we didn't have issues such as this one at Museums Victoria. But I've included some images to show you what wood borer exit holes and frass look like, and some of the damage patterns that you might see in your collections, or hopefully you wouldn't. But also I wanted to mention that wood borers are really difficult pests to notice. because basically to notice the damage happening. Adult females, they lay eggs in cracks and crevices and all exit holes in wood. And after hatching, that larvae burrows into the wood, and then it's creating the tunnels as they feed. So the most structural damage actually happens during this stage, which is often invisible from outside. And once they're fully grown, larvae pupate and near the surface, and adult beetles then chew a small round exit hole and leave to mate and repeat the cycle. Yes, so although the books are not the usual food, they contain cellulose, paper or leather covers, or animal or flower-based glue, which all of them are edible for the larvae. So although this is unrelated to wood borers, I also wanted to mention that termites could pose a significant risk to your books. They can often attack the collection that is stacked on the floor or is left undisturbed in a damp basement or storage areas, as they may enter from the ground nest outside and tunnel directly into books or stored paper. So next slide, please. I added this slide as I recently read this article on CNN about a bad drugstore or biscuit beetle infestation in a Hungarian library. And a year before, I was listening about the same issue with Pern, the Pern library had. And in terms of damage, you can see the small exit holes, and you can also notice the fine powders around your powder around your books, which can be quite difficult to identify what the species is that's attacking your collection, but hopefully, I mean, you would be noticing some of the adults around the infested material. So yes, this is also one of the pests I wanted to mention that presents a really high risk. And next slide, please. So this is something that Liz and I compiled in terms of IPM resources. I'm not sure, Liz, if I included all of them. Yeah, but this is some of the really, really useful information you can find online. Yes, I don't know, Liz, if you have any favorites.
Yeah, I don't know. The UK one, the only caution I've got is that the UK stuff will be specific for UK. And another, just a caution too, if you're trying to Google photos of particular species, just be careful there too, because they're not always accurate. Yeah, and I think AI might make that a little bit more complicated, even more so in the future too. So yeah, just be careful. But the museum's pest one is probably one of the best ones, particularly if you're going to try and identify things. Yeah. But as I said, sometimes look outside of the world of GLAM as well, because there are other resources out there that can be useful too. So as I said, that British Pest Control Association, I can't kind of recommend them strongly enough. They've got some really, really cool videos that you can just Google and watch, and they're really, really informative. It's geared for pest control operators there, but there's a lot of really useful information that you can glean from them as well. So.
I usually love to mention the posters because you can print them
the
on
UK ones,
and I have them everywhere. I usually, when I do an informal IPM training for new staff that starts working at Museums Victoria, I print a lot of them for them so they can have it in their offices and just notify me if they notice anything. But yeah, that's kind of, and the fundamentals of museum IPM, I think that's a really, really good start for a lot of people working in collections, kind of like a good source of information. I think that's more or less it.
Thank you, Liz and Sunny. That was really interesting. I did like scratch, like when I had my camera off, I was scratching a lot during your presentation. But I also found it's really important for archivists that don't work in large organizations where they might have a conservation department or a conservator on staff. It's really important for everyone, even for people that have had training, and I've done Sunny's training too, which is very useful to have those resources and just things to look out for. And I was just thinking about, you know, a silverfish with a mullet is just amazing. I'll definitely be looking out for them. But yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much. And just for people that are online, does anyone have any questions for Sunny and Liz? Or perhaps I can start off if no one else has a burning question straight off. Jack, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask. So you mentioned species identification using different programs, and different resources, especially for Australia. Have you considered, like, do you use like iNaturalist or Atlas of Living Australia, or those sort of more
definitely
focused?
sometimes yeah. It's really hard to find entomologists. A lot of the museums and things used to have like a free service, but you sort of got to know somebody, or you know, have some kind of personal connection to somebody to get that advice. And even we use a lot of Garrard's stuff for our IPM supplies, and they've got an entomologist there, but to be honest, I haven't had a lot of joy getting onto them and getting that support. So there's probably people out there, but they probably charge a fortune for doing it. But like in the UK and stuff, they're doing like DNA profiling, and they do amazing stuff over there. Yeah, so we're a little bit slower here in Australia, I think. Yeah.
Thank you.
I should mention the Museums Victoria has an entomology department. So if I have any questions, they're amazing. So they done with a lot of it.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I think the ID was really interesting. Like, you must have your own little database of, you know, insects that you're coming across. But when you're sort of talking about the ghost silverfish, I just did a little scary face. I'm writing that. It's like, oh, don't come to Australia, please.
Yes, Japan.
I would love to see what they look like, a ghost silverfish.
They're a lot pearlier, like the colours. I said don't go by colour, but they seem to be like sort of pearlier and translucent, and it's just slightly different. And I'm trying to find some reputable photos and stuff. The other thing that we do too is we keep a reference collection of our target ones as well, and not just the actual pests and the different life cycle like stages, but also the damage, examples of the damage and that kind of stuff as well, and the frass. I know it sounds really crazy, but I've got stashes of like silverfish poo versus like your wood borers versus termites, like that, and it's actually really, really helpful. Yeah.
Do you keep that in like a separate location, obviously, to the collection?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Everything's in like, you know, little bottles and things like that, so they can't get out. They're not, and things can't get at them. But yeah, definitely.
And the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was Chomp, because I just think, oh my god, I love that it's got a name now, like a personality.
And he's famous on Facebook now, so is Daniela.
Oh, wonderful. We'll have to check that out. But that must have been such a shock for whoever opened the box or found Chomp.
I reckon, The interesting thing about Chomp too is that he's not paper, he's parchment.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So it may or may not have been after it for food. It could have just been nesting, but I suspect it might have been after food. Yeah.
And I guess the other interesting thing is to keep Chomp. I was just wondering, I guess there would have been a quarantine, and then just, you know.
Well, the rat's long gone. The rat's long gone.
Rat's gone.
Rodents is one of the really, really big scary ones for us, because it's not just so much the threat to the collection, but it's the people risks as well. So I don't know enough around. I'm not an occupational hygienist by any stretch. I wonder about the viability of some of the viruses and the other pathogens that rodents can carry as well. So you've got to be really careful when you're handling that stuff. So we always make sure that anyone that everyone wants to touch it, and it's like, just wash your hands before you leave, because you just don't know, particularly with rodents. They're pretty nasty.
Yeah, interesting. Any other questions, folks?
Yeah, I guess
You have a question? Thanks, Paige.
I just this morning came across some paper registers that have what look like dead encrusted insects in them. As far as I can tell, we don't have a pest problem. I think it's because they were stored externally. They're well dead now, but they're in the pages. What would be your first port of call? What would you do first in that situation?
Sunny, I'll hand that one over to you.
Don't have a freezer.
I mean, yeah, I guess isolation in that case to see whether anything is active, and then we clean it before reintroducing it into the store if you have a conservator. But yeah, I mean, if the infestation is not active, unfortunately, if you don't have a conservator, maybe leaving it on. I don't know if Liz agrees, but I will always say like freezing would be my first step, and then isolation, because that's kind of how I approach these things.
And would you clean the pages as well, like as gently as you can, I guess?
Yeah.
How would you go about that if you don't have a conservator?
We don't have a conservator, so I'm curious.
Liz, I'm not a paper conservator, so I feel like
it's in a register. It's in a register. Is that right?
Yeah, like a bound book. Yeah.
And is it concentrated in one particular area? Is it like like inside the covers directly, or is it?
Mainly like inside the covers. They've got into on the paper kind of area.
Yeah. I'd be following Sunny's advice. I'd freeze it first and then come back, and I'd just either give it a good wipe down if you can, or brush vacuum.
Yep.
Would probably be the better way to do it. And just check also, I don't know if it's got like a hollow back spine as well. Just check all the sort of little crevices and things like that, just to see if you've got muck in there as well. But the cleaning will help you work out, and then set it aside, as Sunny suggested. Just quarantine it after you've done the treatment and the cleaning, and then have another look. That'll help you determine if there's any fresh activity. Yeah, for sure.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
And there's definitely, you can also hire conservators, can't you? There's like I think there's a directory of people, but that's something maybe we could talk about too. Paige, I can sort of help with that a little bit as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much, Sunny and Liz, because we've recorded this session too to help any archivists that just don't have any experience with integrated pest management, or maybe don't have conservators on staff. But also it's a good reminder for anyone that has had training, just as a reminder of, and also new species that they need to look out for, like ghost silverfish. Please don't come. Ghost silverfish. I was just thinking we could make a horror movie about integrated pest management. And honestly, I think it would be museum people would love to watch that. But I just want to thank you for your time this evening. Thank you to everyone who attended. Thank you to Liz and Sunny for sharing your expertise, and thank you for your questions too. And yeah, have a good evening. I hope you can go away now and have some dinner.
Not have nightmares.
yeah. Don't dream of. I definitely will be dreaming about like little creepy crawlies, but that might be funny as well. So thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Well, thank you. Thanks for inviting.
Thank you, Liz.
Bye.
Thanks, Sunny.
Bye. Thanks, Jack.
See ya.